1982, I was a 36-year-old, first-time, brand-new CEO. And it was a troubled telecommunications company. Actually, it was a startup that never really got any traction. My job was to take the technology, figure out a new home for it, and look to do something with it. And it really worked out. Around that period of time, there was a guy that wrote a book. He was a Yale graduate, and he worked in his own business as an agent for a variety of sports stars. But his book was entitled What They Didn't Teach You in Harvard Business School. He never went to Harvard. He was never even a businessman. He was a Yale graduate and a lawyer. And he had 3 phases that he talked about in his book about things that you might do to advance yourself. And I read that and I thought, you know, that's interesting, but there's a big section that's totally missing. And that is, things aren't perfect. There's disruption all of the time. Even when you get into a stable situation, it's likely to have some storm clouds brewing. And what do you do and how do you do it to advance yourself and advance your organization at the same time? I had been the VP of a Fortune 500 company by taking troubled situations, making some advances with them, and then gaining recognition from that and gaining my promotions. And then I figured, gee, I'm successful in the box of a VP, but I wanted the color outside the lines, so could I be a CEO? I went into a troubled situation and was working my formula that had evolved over a period of time, and I thought that could be an interesting book. When I got out of the Army, I was really happy to live to see my 25th birthday with all of my arms and my legs and my head on straight. And for some reason, I made a goal that I would be the VP of a Fortune 500 company in 10 years. I did it in 8, and it took me another couple of years to figure out that that was really a lousy job. But how I did it was going into troubled or challenged situations, volunteering for those troubled or challenging situations, gaining recognition for what advances I had made in those challenging situations and getting to the next level. So there was a series of steps that I did in order to become a VP of a Fortune 500 company. And since I broke the code, that formula was working pretty well for me. Could I advance as a CEO without the pedigree and an engineering degree or a big school name behind me? Well, those that have a pedigree, good for them that they have it. That's about 5% of us, as opposed to 95% of us. But if you take a look at the statistics, less than half of the people with a pedigree actually advance to the tops of their field. So it doesn't work for everybody. So how do you set your pedigree apart? Well, my notion is get into a situation that has some issues. Deal with those issues, gain recognition for that, and set your pedigree apart. Be the tested ship. I really learned along the way is that good people in your foxhole are the big difference. I've actually found for success there are 3 things that folks have in common. There needs to be an enormous degree of passion around the value proposition that you're giving to a constituency, whether it be a customer base or a receiver of a nonprofit benefit in some way, shape, or form. So passion, number 1. Focus, number 2. You just can't do everything. You need to narrow things down to a couple of things that really matter and focus in on accomplishing those things. And then people, really good people, to execute the game plan that is in focused fashion that you all have passion for. Any person in any walk of life and any place in the totem pole can utilize the ABCs to advance. They could be an individual looking for their first supervisory role. They could be a supervisor looking to go to middle management. They could be a middle management looking for the executive staff. They could be on the executive staff and they want the top job. They want to be the CEO. They could be on the board. They could be investors or contributors in a nonprofit world. to a mission. So really on any level of the totem pole. Writing is a very lonely thing, but as I was writing, I found that I really enjoyed the case studies. I interviewed, I recorded, and I had transcribed the interviews, and I wrote the case studies in the first person from the perspective of the person that was telling me their story. So I quite enjoyed that aspect of the writing. My opening chapter in All Hands on Deck is actually a story of an 1858 sea captain, Captain Josiah Nickerson Knowles, who is described to be in pop culture at that time the greatest captain of them all, because he went to sea and had a shipwreck driven into coral reef in a storm and 30-foot waves and stormy seas in the Pacific. And he was able to get his 29 crew and 10 passengers to an island that was uncharted 2 miles away. And over a course of 6 months, they survived and were rescued thanks to the efforts of Captain Josiah Nickerson Knowles. He utilized many of those principles, the ABCs to advance, that I put out in my book. And as I described the ABCs, I always made analogies to what the first chapter read and how Captain Josiah Nickerson Knowles enabled rescue, survival and rescue for his crew, his passengers and crew. I captured the flag and had the opportunity to celebrate with many management teams in a variety of endeavors that I've taken on. I've been the CEO of a half a dozen companies in varying stages: growth, maturity, trouble, renewal, anything from a failing startup to a Fortune 1000 company and things in between. I've been in the private equity world and the venture capital world. This book, All Hands on Deck, as a platform to do some consulting, do some coaching, turning the book into an exec ed seminar. And a good day for me is really helping others, being in that walk of that segment of my life now, helping others to advance, giving them the formula and the tools to do so.